Hey guys, this is Brother Ray Jones with the First Church of God in Princeton, West Virginia. I want to welcome you to our midweek Bible study. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be a part of this time of online learning and growing together. I'm so grateful that I get to be a part of your spiritual development, and I'm thankful that you're being a part of mine as well. If you have your Bibles, I want you to look with me in 2 Samuel, the 16th chapter, verses 5 through 14. We're going to also be looking in 2 Samuel 19. And tonight what we want to talk about is dealing graciously with your enemies. I know that's not always easy to do. It's actually rarely easy to do for most of us. But it is something that the Bible teaches us to do. And David gives us a good example of doing just that. Now, in our last lesson from David's life, we learned that when times are tough, you find out who your friends are. David was on the run because his son Absalom had staged a coup and was taking the throne from his father. And throughout this time, David was met by some friends who helped him in various ways. Some came for moral support, some came for tactical support, some came for practical support, and at least one came with some helpful advice. But unfortunately, our friends are not the only ones who reveal themselves when times are tough. Our enemies and our critics somehow also get the memo about our troubles, just like our true friends do. But they have a different agenda to fulfill. Kind of like a lion circling wounded prey, our enemies and critics will see this as an opportunity to do more harm. But how are we to handle our enemies and our critics? Well, Jesus gives us some very clear words about this. In John 15, verses 18 through 20, we find out through Jesus' teachings that we really shouldn't be surprised that we have enemies and critics. John 15, beginning of verse 18, says this: "If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love its own. Yet because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will keep yours also." Jesus is basically saying here, hey, you know what? They hated me. They're going to hate you too. Again, in Luke 6, verses 22 and 23, he said these words: "Blessed are you when men hate you, and when they exclude you and revile you and cast out your name as evil, for the Son of Man's sake. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy. For indeed your reward is great in heaven, for in like manner their fathers did to the prophets." Now, Jesus clarifies in these verses that the type of mistreatment he's talking about is if you're mistreated because of your faith, if we are mistreated because we are following Christ. That shouldn't surprise us, and there's a blessing that comes from this. Now, let me be clear. If you're mistreated because you're just being a jerk, well, you deserve that, okay? And don't take some high moral road in there and be all highfalutin and thinking that you're doing something just because you're being a jerk and somebody persecuted you. No, that's not what God's talking about. If you're being a jerk, or if you're being sinful and you're suffering because of that, there's no honor in that at all. But there is honor in suffering for the Lord. Now, that doesn't mean we have to go look for opportunities to suffer for the Lord. What Jesus is saying here is that it's going to be a byproduct of doing the right thing. Not everybody's going to be happy with us. Not everybody is going to be supportive. Some are going to be downright critical and maybe even abusive, okay? Well, while David is leaving Jerusalem, he had a lot of good friends that came along, but he also had some enemies who showed up. And one in particular is an account found in 2 Samuel 16, verses 5 through 14. Now, when King David came to Bahurim, there was a man from the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. Coming from there, he came out, cursing continuously as he came, and he threw stones at David and at all the servants of King David. And all the people and all the mighty men were on his right hand and on his left. Also Shimei said thus when he cursed, come out, you bloodthirsty man, you rogue. The Lord has brought a upon you all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. And the Lord has delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom, your son. So now you are caught in your own evil, because you are a bloodthirsty man. Then Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, said to the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Please let me go over and take off his head. But the king said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? So let him curse, because the Lord has said to him, curse David. Who then shall say, why have you done so? And David said to Abishai and all the servants, see how my son who comes from my own body seeks my life? How much more now may this Benjamite? Let him alone and let him curse, for so the Lord has ordered him. It may be that the Lord will look on my affliction, and that the Lord will repay me with good for his cursing this day. And as David and his men went along the road, Shimei went along the hillside opposite him and cursed as he went, threw stones at him and kicked up dust. Now the king and all who were with him became weary, so they refreshed themselves there. Wow, this is kind of interesting, isn't it? David and his people are leaving Jerusalem. They've gotten word that Absalom is coming in. He staged a coup, and he's got a bunch of people on his side. And David uses wisdom to head out. He has to run for his life again. David had been on the run before throughout his days, and now, honestly, as a result of his own sin, he's found himself there again. And as he's leaving, this guy Shimei just keeps cursing him and berating him and all of his servants. And some of his trained soldiers are wanting to eliminate the threat, okay? But David stands against that. Shimei was of the house of Saul, and he attacked David in the following ways. First, he's insulting him. He's cursing him and calling him names. You ever been cursed? I have. I remember some time ago now, it's been decades, I was at a Walmart down in Louisiana, and I was going in to get an oil change. And we were dropping off one vehicle. My family was waiting in the other vehicle, and I was just going to drop the car off and get the oil changed, and I was going to leave. We were going to go watch a movie, because I found out if you stick around and wait on an oil change, they'll take an hour and a half. But if you go somewhere and do something else, they usually get it done in about 30 minutes, and you just come back and pick it up. Well, the guy walks out to take my order and ask, what I'm needing. And when I pull back to the oil and lube place at Walmart there in Louisiana, and he looks at me, excuse me, and he says, well, what are you doing, you old blankety blank blank? I'm not going to repeat what he said. And I was just kind of standing there thinking, did he just call me what I thought he just called me? And I said, well, sir, I just like to get an oil change. Is that doable? And that guy says, well, if you really want to, we'll get you one, you old blankety blank blank. And he curses me again. And I had on a ball cap and sunglasses, and I took my sunglasses off, and I looked at him, and I said, sir, who do you think I am? Because he was actually talking to me like he knew me and was just messing around. And he turned 30 shades of white when he realized I was not the person that he thought I was. And he goes, well, aren't you John Smith, my ex-son-in-law? And I'm like, no, sir. My name's Ray Jones, and I just want to get an oil change. And he was so apologetic. It was hilarious. I thought it was funny. And I tell that story over and over and over again. Because as a pastor, I don't really get cussed a whole lot anymore. But that happened that day. And I hadn't done anything wrong to it. Well, there have been other times in my life when I've been cussed horribly. And I have to confess, there were some days, many, many years ago now, where I did my share of insulting and cursing people, okay? Those are not kind things to do, and they're not kind things to hear. But that's what Shimei was doing to David and to his servants. He was also telling lies. He accused David of killing Saul. David never killed Saul. That's not how Saul's life ended. Matter of fact, David spared Saul's life on 2 distinct occasions when he could have killed him. That was not who David was. He also accused the Lord of giving the kingdom over to Absalom. That's not what God was doing. God was in none of this, okay? God still wanted David to be king. So this guy was telling lies. He was sharing false news. He also attempted physical harm. He literally threw rocks at these people. He kicked up dust. He looked like a manager of a baseball team going out and talking to an umpire and really being mad about a call. You've probably seen some of that footage before. Well, needless to say, this guy was misbehaving horribly. And look how David dealt with the man. He dealt with him graciously. He responded instead of reacting. He didn't do a knee-jerk reaction and say, you know what, who do you think you are insulting me? And send one of his soldiers to punish him or even kill him. He actually wouldn't let anybody execute the man, even though the man deserved it. David dealt graciously with him. He looked beyond the surface of this particular incident, and he saw the possibility of the Lord's hand at work in all that was going on. That's what a man after God's own heart has the ability to do. What he went on to do is this. He outlasted Shimei's criticisms. Let me tell you what I mean by that. In the short term, it looked like David was in the wrong. It looked like Absalom was in the right for what he was doing, and Shimei had bought into that lie. And in the moment, with everybody on Absalom's side, David couldn't outrun that, okay? What he could do is outlast it. And that's exactly what David did. Now, what I mean by that is this. I like to distance run. And in the span of time that I've had distance running as a hobby, I've been chased by all kinds of dogs. And early on in my running experience, when a dog chased me, I thought, wow, I need to just run faster and outrun this dog. Well, that's a big mistake because there's not a dog on the planet I can outrun, okay? I found that out pretty quickly. What I learned is this. For the most part, what that dog thinks is I'm a threat, okay? Dogs in their nature, they see something running, they chase it. And if they're on their property, they're usually trying to impress their owners and they're trying to protect their property. They think that I'm a threat either to their owner or that I'm going to come, dig up their bones or play with their toys or eat their food or drink from their water bowl. Well, I'm not wanting to do any of that. I'm simply out on a run. And here's what I figured out. I can't outrun any of those dogs, but I've outlasted them all. I just keep going. I acknowledge they're there. I've learned a few tricks along the way to not let any of them bite me because I've been bitten a couple of times, and that's not a fun experience. But I acknowledge that they're there. I don't let them get too close, but I just keep going, and they eventually realize, man, this guy's nuts. He just wants to keep running, and I'm tired. I don't want to do that. So they leave me alone. What I learned from that experience in running is this. What you can't outrun, you have to outlast. And that's what David was putting into practice here. He couldn't outrun the immediate circumstances and the criticisms that were coming his way. But instead, he outlasted them. Another thing that David does in all of this is he forgives Shimei. If you go down to 2 Samuel chapter 19, pick it up in verse 15. Absalom's coup is unsuccessful, and David and all of his entourage are coming back to Jerusalem. And let's look at what happens then. 2 Samuel 19, beginning at verse 15. Then the king returned and came to the Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal to go and to meet the king, to escort the king across the Jordan. And Shimei, the son of Jerah, a Benjamite, who was from Bahurim, hurried and came down with the men of Judah to meet King David. There were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him, and Ziba, the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons and his 20 servants with him. And they went over the Jordan before the king. And then a ferry boat went across to carry over the king's household and to do what he thought was good. Now Shimei, the son of Jerah, fell down before the king when he had crossed the Jordan. Then he said to the king, "Do not let my lord impute iniquity to me, or remember what wrong your servant did on the day that my lord the king left Jerusalem, that the king should take it to heart. For I, your servant, know that I have sinned. Therefore here I am, the first to come today of all the house of Joseph to go down to meet my lord the king." But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered and said, "Shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed?" And David said, "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should be adversaries to me today? Shall any man be put to death today in Israel? For do I not know that today I am king over Israel?" Therefore the king said to Shimei, "You shall not die." And the king swore to him. Look at what David does here. He's coming back. He's been reestablished as king. He was king all along. He knew that, and a whole lot of other people knew that too. Absalom's attempt failed. It was short-lived, and it was not of the Lord. It was not going to be able to sustain itself. Well, Shimei now is apologizing. He is begging for forgiveness. He's repenting of his sin. Well, one of David's servants, his soldiers, says, "We got to kill this guy. He cursed the king." And David says, "Look, guys, nobody needs to die today. This guy, I'm sparing his life, and we're going to go on. It's clear beyond the shadow of any doubt, I'm the king. Let's make this a day of celebration and honor." This was graciousness and forgiveness on David's part to Shimei. Now, he did repent. He did come and confess his sin and ask for forgiveness. He gave a genuine apology. Well, David then was in a good place to be able to extend that forgiveness. Now, Jesus teaches us to forgive those who have wronged us. In Matthew 6, verses 14 and 15, Jesus said, "For if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses." Then again in Luke 23, verse 34, as Jesus was hanging on the cross, bearing the sins of mankind, he looked out and he said these words, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do." Jesus told us by his words and his own actions that we are to forgive those who've wronged us. Jesus not only instructed us to do this, he modeled it for us. That is important for us to know and understand. In Luke 6:37, he goes on to say this, "Judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you shall not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven." Jesus told us to do these things. He modeled it in his earthly ministry, and even while he was hanging on the cross, dying for you and for me, he modeled that action of forgiveness, that grace of forgiveness. Well, my friend, if Jesus tells us to do it, and Jesus modeled for us how to do it, then we'd better do it. And here's what compels me to forgive other people. If sheer obedience doesn't do it, and that should be enough, Ephesians 4:32 sums it up for me. Ephesians 4:32, Paul says this, "And be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ forgave you." So if I can't muster it up enough within me to forgive my enemies simply because Jesus said do it, what I need to remember is when I consider everything God's forgiven me of, how can I not forgive anyone who's sinned against me? When you look at it through that lens, it makes it easier to forgive. Now, that doesn't mean it's easy to forgive. I get that. Please don't hear what I'm saying and interpret it as some trite pastoral saying. And but just let me explain to you, I understand it's not always easy to forgive. I get that. I've had to be forgiven by some people that I genuinely needed their forgiveness, and it wasn't easy to ask for that forgiveness. It wasn't easy for them to give that forgiveness. I've also had to forgive others who've hurt me deeply in various ways, and I didn't want to forgive at times, but the truth of Scripture and my own experience, because I have been forgiven, compels me to forgive them. David knew what it was like to be forgiven. You remember that horrible sin that he committed against Bathsheba and against God and against Uriah and even himself. Well, God forgave him. Now, many of the consequences of his sin did not go away, but he still had the forgiveness of God. And I can't help but think that David thought about that, excuse me, as Shimei cried out to him and asked for forgiveness himself. Well, that's what we've got to keep in mind. Because I've been forgiven, I can and must forgive other people. But why is it so hard to forgive? What makes it so difficult? Well, a lot of times it's because we've been hurt. And when we've been hurt deeply, it takes us maybe a little more time to forgive. Sometimes it's hard to forgive because we feel like if in forgiving the other person that we're letting them off the hook, that all the consequences of their offense is just wiped away. That's not necessarily the case. When we forgive someone, what we're doing is no longer holding it against them. There may still be some fallout for what they've done to us or what they've said about us, but we need to forgive them nonetheless. Another thing that makes it hard for us to forgive is we really want to be vindicated. We've been wronged. We want justice, and justice needs to be meted out in the appropriate way. But what we've got to remember is that sometimes we want more than justice. Sometimes we want retribution. And that's really not where we need to go. That's going to cause us more harm than good. What we need to do is remember that Paul told us that, quoting the Lord, that vengeance is mine, says the Lord, I will repay. We need to trust the Lord that he's going to be gracious and just and take care of these things that need to be done. Honestly, the best thing we can do when we've been hurt or wronged by someone is to let it go. Now, as I say that, I understand we need to confront people. We need to try to resolve and reconcile where we can. We need to maybe talk about how things need to change and be different. But when everything's been said and done, particularly when a genuine apology's been given, and that's what Shimei gave to King David, then we need to forgive and let it go. And as I say that, let me offer this as well. I get that some of the offenses and some of the things that we've dealt with have caused deep, deep hurt. Well, we still need to forgive, but what we also need to do is heal. And sometimes in the process of working through the forgiveness part of what we need to do, it keeps rearing its ugly head in us because we're not totally healed from the pain that's been inflicted. Well, that is understandable. And I want you to know God gives us the grace we need to bring about the healing that we need in our own lives, as well as the grace we need to be able to forgive others. So if you are still healing from emotional or even physical wounds that someone's inflicted upon you while you work through forgiveness, you just understand you can have forgiven them, but still be hurt in trying to work through the pain. The grace of God that has forgiven you and forgiven me will help us forgive others completely and fully. David modeled that for us, and I'm glad he did. And what's more, Jesus modeled it for us even more. Well, thank you for your time tonight. I hope you've received a blessing from this lesson. And wherever you are, I hope you are well and blessed. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. God bless and have a good evening.